talking to everybody. This is going to be kind of a sales pitch for citizenship. It is a how-to, but this is kind of a wanting people to test the waters, and trying to get you thinking about if you're not doing citizenship in your program, um, maybe thinking about, hey, I can do this. This sounds like it's doable. I want to try this. I think it would be good for my students. And so I knew this was a very targeted audience. So I'm glad there are, a few of us here today, very small number. So please feel like you can unmute yourself, and as we go along, have a discussion, very informal. If you'd like to share your screen, I would love that. I have Nicole Gray in the room with me as well, and she's going to help me focus myself if that's possible and help me watch the chat so that I don't miss anything. But please jump in and, if you're already doing this, say what works for you. If you have any questions or just any comments as we go. So these are our objectives for today. We're just going to discuss the difference in civics and citizenship. And starting out, I've noticed programs who have ESL especially, a lot of programs use the terms civics and citizenship synonymously, and they're not quite the same. And so we're going to discuss those differences. We're going to learn who qualifies to become a U.S. citizen. We're going to talk about the N-400, the application process, and the naturalization interview. And then we're going to identify some different program models to get you thinking about ways you could implement this and set this up in your program. And I'm going to show you some wonderful resources. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to go deeply into all of them, but I'm going to give you links to have them and use them, and they are all free. So there are so many reasons why you should add a citizenship pathway. And until I started working with the USCIS, there was a grant application in the spring. And until I started looking through that and working with a partner agency, I didn't realize the benefits that it would offer to our students. So there are not just benefits to our students, but it benefits our program. It offers community outreach and service, and it can really expand services, and that expands your program. That expands and helps you grow. So there's so many reasons why you should consider starting a citizenship class and pathway or program. And I use a lot of just direct quotes from resources, and because there are so many ready to use options out there. And so I did this on purpose so that you can see how many things are provided for you to just pick up and use right off the shelf. So I've got the link to the document that this quote comes from, but this is the main reason that I found for offering citizenship, because there's so many people who live here, who work here, they pay taxes here, and they're eligible to be citizens, but they don't know how. If they know how, it's still expensive, and that it just puts the dream out of reach. So they can just have that longing to be a citizen and not know how to go about it. Well, we are in the unique role of being able to help them meet a lifelong dream. These are from two separate sources. I've got them cited underneath. But these are some reasons that an adult ed student might want to become a citizen. Of course, the first one we think of is to vote. And of course, often we don't think of serving on a jury as a reason to become a citizen, but actually, that is a privilege, and some people want that honor. Traveling with a passport, citizenship, so that they can obtain it for their children. so they can apply for federal jobs, they could become an elected official. Keeping their residency and not having to worry about a green card or being deported is that's a big one, especially over the last 8 to 12 years. Um, I remember in my town, where I was currently at that time I was a teacher, and I remember uh, when the election happened, all of a sudden there was just a great unrest because people were scared that they were going to be deported. Well, that fear would be taken away if they had a chance to become a legal citizen. Being a citizen also makes them become eligible for federal scholarships and grants. That's one that I didn't really think about. But again, if you're not a citizen, you can't apply for those things. And it also gives you a chance to obtain government benefits. So I mentioned that I'm finding out a lot of programs use the terms citizenship and civics interchangeably. They're very similar until you start talking about the application for naturalization. So let's talk about the ways that they're different. The N400 form is the big difference. That is the goal of what I'm calling a citizenship pathway. And so that's the phrase that I'm going to use throughout this presentation. So in a citizenship pathway, you're trying to help your student be able to apply through the N400. You're trying to help them gain enough civics knowledge and reading and writing and speaking knowledge to pass a citizenship interview. And you're trying to help them gain enough civics understanding to pass a naturalization test. So it's a lot different than just thinking, oh, I have to help them pass the civics test. So it is civics, but it is so much more. And that's what makes the citizenship a little challenging. But that's where we are at a unique crossroad for the student. We can provide so many services that they need that they don't even know they need. This is an example of the N400, and it is a form provided by USCIS, and there is the link to it. You can pull up samples. I can't actually take you to the form because to get into it, from what I found, unless you just do like a Google search for images, which is what I did, to get to the actual form, it wants the student or the applicant to create an account through USCIS. So as you can imagine, it will take quite a bit of digital literacy skills and English language acquisition skills just to be able to access the form. But filling the form successfully and meeting all the requirements, that is the goal of the citizenship pathway that I'm telling you about today, and trying to hope that if you haven't started a citizenship pathway, that you will. And if you have started one, and if you're a veteran, I would like you to consider being a mentor as I try to recruit other programs. So we'll quickly discuss who can become a citizen. Anyone 18 years of older who has authorization to live and work in the U.S. on a permanent basis. For example, if they've got a green card for at least 5 years, or 3 if they're married to a citizen. You have to have continuous residence in the U.S. for at least 5 years, or 3 if you're married to a citizen, and be physically present in the U.S. for at least half of that time. And I have the link provided underneath for that information. And continued, to become a citizen, you must be able to, and now see if this page doesn't sound more like an area where teachers are more needed. They must be able to read, write, and speak basic English. But if they have a disability, they don't necessarily have to speak English at all. There's some leeway, so there's some accommodations. But again, they still need a guide through the process. They must have a knowledge and understanding of the fundamentals of U.S. history and government. They must be a person of good moral character, and they must take a loyalty oath to the United States and support the Constitution and form of government of the United States. And I have a link at the bottom that takes you to a video of the loyalty oath, but we are going to skip that right now for time because I kind of got a little happy and added a lot of resources in here. And so I want to make sure that we can get to everything. But when you get the PowerPoint, just take a chance to click through everything and find some of the treasures that are in there. These are the steps for a student to complete a citizenship application. They'll ask about personal information, but not just about them. They'll ask about their parents, your spouse, children, any arrests, where they've lived, where they've worked for 5 years, where you've traveled for 5 years. Now, this is quite a steep application fee. There's $725, but you can apply for a waiver. So there's a fee waiver that can be applied for it to be waived. And so on the USCIS website, there are fee waiver applications that students can apply for. And so now that we've talked a little bit about what exactly citizenship is versus civics, now we're going to talk about starting a formal citizenship pathway in an adult education program. Now you're going to see this slide twice in this presentation. I had it at the end just wrapping up with some resources, but I kept coming back to it and I thought, we really need to see this at the front because, and I again, not going to go to it for time because it is quite a lengthy video, but I want you to understand something that I didn't starting out. I just had in my mind thinking that the civics test was the hardest part. I kept thinking civics, that they, learning all about the facts and about the Constitution, and I thought that was the focus or the hard part. I did not realize how in depth the naturalization interview is. And so really our goal as adult ed teachers is to get them to the part where they can pass the naturalization video or interview. And so this is a video of some role playing. And when you get a chance, I've got it highlighted where if you want to see the interview portion, you can go to the 6-minute, 8-second mark. And then to see the civics reading and writing, you can go to the 10-minute, 45 mark. And then they updated it in the second video to show how they use tablets now for the interview, in the interview process. It's still with an interviewer, but instead of a paper application, they use tablets. And I have been talking quite a bit. So y'all jump in there, and any comments, questions? What do you do at your program if you do this?
We actually do not have this program at UAM, but I have been very interested into seeing how it works and how it runs. And I really would like to implement one of these into our program. So all this information has been very, very helpful.
Yay. Well, I was hoping that you were interested in it because I'm trying to recruit. So Mr. Steed, I hate to call you out, but do you currently have a full citizenship managed enrollment class going on? and I know you may not be where you can unmute right now, so I should have warned you. If you can't unmute, that's okay. Your mic died, so you're writing in the chat. Thank you. I get that. Okay. Well, so like I said, I started off with the video of the interview, and we'll come back to the naturalization interview. But in my mind, when I first started the role of ESL liaison, in my mind, it was all civics. And then I was enlightened, oh, but there's so much more. You've got to get them to pass that interview. And that's when I realized how important the teacher's role is as far as getting them conversing. And okay, so Mr. Steed says that they have a very well developed program. 3 hours per week is a citizenship class. And then Christy says, I don't have enough students to have a managed enrolled class, but I have worked one-on-one with a couple of students, and they both obtained their citizenship in the last 5 years. And do I have any resources we can point to for those who need a green card? On the USCIS website, where I have a link, there is some information on a green card. And so I'll get you to those. Also, Arkansas United is going to be a good resource for you. Mr. Steed says we study history, government, as well as cultural details us Americans might take for granted. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. Well, feel free. I'll be watching the chat, and Nicole's going to help me watch the chat too. So in case I miss anything, so y'all just jump in any details that need to be added as I go along, because y'all have so much to offer. So the things that I want to point out for resources today are the frameworks and standards provided by USCIS, sample curriculum built on those standards, a program development guide, and elements of a quality citizenship program. And those all come from the URL at the bottom. I will be showing you some other things thrown in, but these things are the heavy hitters right here. So this is a screenshot of the, I call them several different things, but it depends on, where you look in this document. It calls it a framework. It says standards. So whether framework or standards or guide comes out of my mouth, this is what you're actually going to be teaching. So this is the meat of it. This is what you're going to be teaching to your students. And so if you go to USCIS, this is document M1121, and that, and we're going to look at some of the things in it. This is taken directly from the curriculum development guide. That's another thing they call the frameworks. So here's the tips tips for using it in your classroom. You could just use it as a checklist to make sure that you're covering all the content. I know with standards, when I first started teaching, I just wanted to make sure. Now I'm talking about way back when I just, first started going. I just wanted to make sure I was covering everything I was supposed to cover. And, just check to make sure I was getting everything in. Well, that's a good starting place. So, even if you just want to use the frameworks here as a checklist to make sure that you're getting all the citizenship content in, it's enough to just use it like that. Or you could go to the next box. You could use it to create thematic units or complementary lessons and units. So you could use those frameworks to break the standards out and group them into units that work for how you teach and your students. You know your students best. You know the way you like to structure things. So pick and choose topics within those frameworks to structure how you want your units to go. How I'm going to focus on the guide today is the bottom box. So you can use the tips for, you can use these tips, and you can use it as a complete content inventory. You can develop a citizenship curriculum with course outlines, a syllabus, lesson plans, and activities. You can build, it's got everything you can build off of. Um, I think you should put your own flavor in things, but this has everything you need to start off if you know nothing about citizenship. Oh, hi, Carrie. Carrie says, I almost exclusively use the materials that the USCIS has developed, and I love them. I teach civics, N400 prep, speaking, writing, dialogue, interview practice. The N400's language is very difficult for ELs to understand, so we spend a lot of time making sure they're really understanding everything. Very good. I'm glad to hear that you endorsed it, because it looked like the USCIS materials look surprisingly well put together to me. I mean, I work for government, so I don't want to say, oh, well, for government stuff, it's really good. But I mean, it's really well put together. I'm terrifically impressed. Like, it looks like packaged material from a corporate source. So, oh,
Yeah.
good. And you use it too? Okay.
Wendy, I would
Yeah.
say that I sometimes it's a little bland and I do have to put my own flavor in it. But if you go through all their materials, they actually have a lot of like strategies, little tools to use, games to play. But you have to kind of dig for that stuff. But I pretty much use that material, but then I kind of just put my own little spin on it because I figure that's what they need to know. That's why it's there. So
Gotcha.
I like
Thank
it.
you for sharing that. All right. Let's see. I made the mistake of touching something on my screen, so I'm going to leave it alone. All right. Oh, except that now I can't see y'all. Oh, and also use guest speakers. Thank you, Ben. I love a good guest speaker. I'm trying to get where I can see people back up on my screen.
Someone did that earlier, and let me read you what they said. It said maybe you can at the top right click view and choose and do the side-by-side gallery.
Okay, I may have to. I exited full screen, and that's what helped me. One of the devices I'm on is that. So thank you. That did help. I'm on a Chromebook on one device, and so it's a little wonky. All right. So thank you all for the input, because it's nice to know what is actually working out in the field. All right. So for this citizenship pathway,
I think we have a question, Wendy.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I think Ben raised his hand.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm sorry if this is not the right time.
Oh, you're good.
It's I got interrupted with a call from a student, so I'm sorry if I about the timing. But I just wanted to share one thing real quick.
Yes.
We make use of guest speakers in the class, but just a personal FYI, we used to I would invite attorneys, immigration attorneys, to come speak because I thought it was a good source of information. But then I realized that we needed to be careful about doing that because it looks like I'm endorsing that person's business. And so there are other immigration attorneys in the area who started questioning why I was inviting one person and not another. And so the Arkansas United is a wonderful resource, but also I was going to say, even before Arkansas United, we used Catholic Charities as a resource. They have an office in Springdale, and they're a great resource of information. And then a lot of our students would go there for assistance. And I think they have an office in Little Rock, and I'm not sure where else, but they're a good resource too.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to write that down. You said the Catholic Charities? Because I'm having trouble finding resources, in other parts of the state. All right, thank you for that. All right. Switching gears, I am a very visual person, and so I stole this image on the right out of the guide that we're looking in right now. And so this is a picture. If you haven't started a citizenship pathway, this is really what the process looks like visually. So when you start down the path, there's really three things you have to consider. You go through the pre-interview components. There is the naturalization interview and test components itself, and then there are post-interview components. So it's not a one and done thing. It's a whole process, and you have to prepare the student through each of these phases. And so when you're looking at just the naturalization interview and test components, that is, remember we said it's not just a civics issue. You've got the speaking, you've got the reading, and you've got the writing. But teachers are all, y'all are already doing well with the speaking, reading, and writing. And so if you're, and if you're doing civics already too, then why not add just finishing it out with the naturalization application? So all the integration of that just naturally lends itself to becoming a citizen. So so many of the things that we do fit this process so well, and I think that we would do it in more programs if we realize that it's so doable. I think that's the biggest hurdle. It's just that we don't in in places away from Northwest Arkansas. I think we just don't realize how doable it is because we don't. It's not as easily accessible or seen here, and so I think we just have to talk about it more and get it going. So that's one of my goals today. Now we're switching. This is the second resource from USCIS that I'm really wanting to dig into. So the first one was a frameworks or standards or development guide. That was the whole first book we went through. Now this one is number two. I'm calling it number two. They even give you a sample curriculum, and it's for low beginners ESL. So it's to me fabulous. I mean, it can be a little dry, like any curriculum. You've got to make it you. You've got to do what works for you, what works for your students. There's nothing that is canned that is perfect, but this is a good start, especially if you have not done this before. And so I think that this is a good dipping your toe in water. And so down at the bottom, I've got the link to the file. This sample curriculum is built around the citizenship standards that we just looked at, and they are based on NRS levels, literacy to low beginning. This is a screenshot of the sample curriculum course, specifically the course abstract. And so in the curriculum, they give you an example of course abstract, a scope and sequence, a sample syllabus. They have 3 units based on the NRS levels, and they have it divided into lessons. They give you unit assessments, and they give you a course calendar. This is a screenshot of what the course calendar looks like. And then this is the third book or document. This is the program development guide. So this is okay. You've decided that your program doesn't do citizenship and you want to do citizenship. So this book or document is like, okay, let's sit down, let's make this work. I want to add this to our program. And the cover looks like this on the left. Now, I did not put this first because I think you needed to know the other pieces were there, easy to go, so that you could know it was doable. But this is really what should be read first in my mind, because this is the map. This is how to put it together in my head. It's like, oh, if I want to make a program, this is what I need to do, steps 1, 2, and 3. So there's 2 phases, and the first phase is the program development phase. And if you're a director, this should sound a lot like the things that we talk about in a program review or site visit. So you've got a community needs assessment, you've got program design, curriculum development. It talks about funding, partnerships, staff recruitment, curriculum and lesson plan development. And then you get to putting it in action. You've got actually implementing your program. It talks about student onboarding, class cycles, evaluations of programs, celebrations, reflections, and then ongoing PD. I like this graphic of the life cycle of an adult citizenship student. And then there are tons of idea boards or tip sheets on USCIS, and they're not just for citizenship. I think that some of them are good for whatever kind of programs you run, but this one is on promoting retention. I strongly encourage you to go to this link because this really has tons of questions that you could use with any student that walks through your door. And this will help you think about if you have students who come once or twice and don't come back, this may really help you think about why you have that issue. So I strongly encourage you, please go check this out because this is a very down-to-earth way of looking at how you could look at your orientation and maybe change things up or look at the point of view a little bit differently to help your retention and really look at it in the point of view of a student. This is another timeline from the program development document. So see, it lines out for you. It's ready for you to just put your own timelines in about how you want to structure it and okay, when do I want to have this done by? When am I going to develop my lesson plans? When do I want to begin classes? It walks you backwards. They provide you a sample student IEP. Now, using the words IEP not in the special ed sense of the word, but an individualized education plan just as far as knowing your students' goals. And I like this IEP not just for a citizenship student, but this is a good plan for any student because look at the areas that it covers. So I really like this example, and it comes from the same document, the third document. They've got a network and referral tool that, again, very useful. It comes from the guide. Here's your fourth document from USCIS. It is Elements of Program Quality. And it's just talking about, well, now that you know how to build one, how do you know to build a good one? And so it covers program planning and outcomes, instructional staff recruitment, ongoing professional development, curriculum instruction, learner assessment, learner recruitment, support services, and program environment. And you'll find the link to it at the bottom of the page. Now we're switching out of USCIS so much. You'll still see a few of their resources, but we're past the heavy hitting documents. Before we go into our ancillary resources, does anyone have any comments about the heavy hitters that we just passed? Because you really could build your program just based on those 4 documents. Or any questions? All right, I'm going to keep rolling then. If you think of any, just stop me, slow me down, yell at me. All right, on this page, I have 2 links. One will take you, and this would fall under the post-interview, because remember we said there were pre-interview activities, there were interview activities itself, and then post-interview activities. So we've got the oath of allegiance, which is after the interview, and so there is a link to a video of actual citizenship ceremonies. People taking the oath. And then there's a link that teachers can use in the classroom for the oath. Like we said, this is going back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier. So, do you think the civics test is the hardest part? Well, they do provide help for the civics test. This is the USCIS link to the Guide to Monuments and Memorials. This is a link to the 128 civics questions. So yes, there are questions that you can prepare the students for the civics test. But again, you need to keep in mind that you're not just preparing them to sit down and fill in a multiple choice test. It's not necessarily like the civics test at the high school. They need to be able to answer these questions when they're asked by the interviewer, and they'll need to be able to read and write about them. So they'll have to not just use this. It's kind of like the TABE, how the TABE goes deeper than the TABE 910 used to. Same thing, when it switched to the 1112, it was much deeper. So they don't just need to know the answers to these questions. They need to be able to work with and use the knowledge from these 128 civics questions. And so the link will take you to them. This is a pocket study guide for those 128 civics questions, and the link will take you to that. It's all free for use, and the students can have their own pocket guide. There are civics flashcards for teachers, and they're the good old handy dandy, truly you print them and cut them out flashcards. Some people still, like the old school flashcards. So they provide those. There is an app as well. So don't forget though, the civics plus the reading and writing, they're all tested together, all smushed together. So is the naturalization interview the hardest part? And again, we're back to that slide I told you that you'd see two of. So when you have time to review this, go back to the interview at 6 minutes and 8 seconds to look at the interview portion, and then the reading and writing in civics at 10 minutes and 45 seconds. All right, I mentioned in the description for this presentation that we would talk about some program offerings, and this is where in just a little bit I'm going to turn to y'all to see what you do, because several of you already do this. Most of what I have seen offered in our state is managed, but I'm going to keep it broad and just say managed versus open for right now. I am working with some other options that I hope to talk to you about in the next year or so, but we'll get there later. But for right now, you could start slowly, think about managed versus enrollment, or you could think about workplace options. So the link under the banner here takes you to some information on these workplace options: independent workplace-based, collaborative workplace-based, externally based, or referral driven. And the way you get student buy-in and worker buy-in is by the employer providing perhaps paid time off to go to the participate in the class. So that's one way, but you can go to that website to tell you more. So before we go on, I'd like to talk about how you structure your classes. So please unmute or throw in the chat how your classes are structured or modeled. Do you just work with one student at a time as they come? Do you actively seek out students who want to get their citizenship? Do you just take them as they come? Do you have a whole class? I know Fort Smith has, classes of whole groups at a time. but not all of us have ESL classes that large to even have enough to want their citizenship. So what do you do? What works for you?
Now, Wendy, we don't necessarily have the classes set up, but we have had one or two students here or there that have come and needed help and guidance, and the teachers have helped that person go through the process. And they actually, I think we've had two that, and this has been like in the last 2 years, but we've had two that have completed and gotten their citizenship, but we don't offer it as a class yet.
Okay. Awesome. All right, Letitia says, we don't have a citizenship program right now. We have about 25 ESL students, but they come and go. They're very busy and can't always attend. Okay, that's good. And you may just throw some flyers up or mention that it's an option and start advertising it, or just planting the seeds in their mind, and maybe can develop it. And James says, I presently have 12 students in my class. It's managed enrollment. We meet twice per week after lunch. Okay, thank you.
Wendy, we have currently in Springdale, Northwest Technical Institute, we have 2 classes, one in the morning and one in the evening, 2 days a week. Each class is 2 days a week. And we have about 12 students in those classes. We think we may have to add another class because of limited space, because I'm in a very small room, so I can't have very many students right now. So.
Gotcha.
But it's specifically citizenship, but we are one of the larger programs, so we have a lot of students to work with.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all for sharing. Does anyone utilize any, now, I mean, I know theoretically we all use distance learning, but is for anyone joining the call, is it a real piece of your citizenship or ESL offering? Do you really lean on digital learning right now?
So sorry, it's Carrie again. So this semester I've actually had 2 students. One had a baby and another one just couldn't attend classes. And so I'm working with them distance ed, but not digitally. Kind of a little digitally, and then we're doing packets. So I'm going to see how that goes this semester. And if it's something that works, then I'm hoping to do something a little more formal next semester.
Awesome. Will you let me know how that goes and kind of what you're doing? Because I'm trying to get a feel for what works with that population. Because I know the lack of the community and not being able to feel that community spirit is that's hard to get remotely.
Yes. We just began, so I will keep you updated.
Thank you. AT Ozark Clarksville Center use in person in Burlington English for their Tyson students. Thank you. And then Letitia says it's hard because we don't have good internet at our room, and most of my students only have a smartphone for internet access. I feel that I live in a very rural area, and we go days at a time with no internet, and so we have to be creative. I know in my region, we also have that problem. My area is Northeast, and so it can be a challenge. And so sometimes, packets do have to be utilized. So online for supplemental things, but can't use it for main instruction. That's understandable. You've got to do with what you got and be creative, but that's what teachers excel at. So thank you for sharing. All right. Anyone else before we move on? We're getting close. All right. Now, I'm not going to go to each of these. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about them. So this first link is back on USCIS, and it talks about starting, how to start an account. So remember, we talked about Form N400, and so the student can't do anything really until they create an account. And so that video walks you through that process. And then these next few are about forms, and they're just quick little, some of them are like 16 seconds, some are 30 seconds, but just little blurbs on, hey, You got to make sure you send the forms to the right address, or make sure you update the latest form, and things about, just sign your form. So just little reminders that might be good to, embed in some, I don't know, as a bell ringer or something, so that students have access to it somehow. Because I would hate to know that I sent in my application or something, and then I didn't put the right address on it. That would be something I would do. So they're just good little reminders. Then a link on to a video on how to pay fees. This one is a good one on watching out for immigration scams, because I know how susceptible anyone is really these days. You don't know, it's hard to spot some of these scams because the scammers have gotten so good. And so this warns immigrants, hey, you can file all these forms. You can do this and this for free. You don't have to pay anybody for this, and it helps them watch for the scams versus the real application fees. This is the USCIS Civics Study app. And then the very bottom link is a video explaining, it's for students, explaining the citizenship process. It is a little bit dry to me, but it has an ASL interpreter signing the entire video. And so I felt like it was important to include that. I was tickled to find that USCIS also has educator resources that are, they're just good education videos. Like I stumbled upon this one on zombie nouns, and my son he's 16 and hard to amuse about anything. And so he saw me pulling that video up yesterday while I was finishing up my, tweaking my presentation. And he's like, Mom, why are you watching, a video on that? And so it piqued his interest. And, but it's, just good videos on teaching different English language pieces. So they've got one on classroom management in non-traditional classroom space. I know that applies to a lot of us. If you teach in a workplace room that's a lunchroom, how do you work with that space? If you teach in a basement and you have to carry your stuff in a bag. So really good video there. And they're short, they're sweet, but they're very helpful. There's a video on time management tips. There's a good one on managed enrollment versus open enrollment. And then tips for effective orientation. That is the one to the idea board that I showed you earlier. Then here's a few more websites. I've got two to the New Americans campaign. I think there's a lot more in that group. Honestly, I didn't have enough time to really develop going down that rabbit hole, because I know me and rabbits and I like to chase them. So I had to cut myself off there. But I encourage you to just check out the New American campaign. Check that out when you get a chance, because it looked like it's very promising. Then here's an idea board. The idea boards are the tip sheets, like the orientation one. I told you there were a bunch of them. Here's a good one on how to choose a civics textbook. And then I could not pull it up to show you because I have it saved differently. But if you register on USCIS, which you register for free, you can download a citizenship toolkit. And I've got mine printed in a binder, and I find it very helpful. So I've got it along with the other documents that I shared with you today, all in a binder next to me. And it's really been helpful and taught me a lot. Still have a long way to go, but I'm very thankful that I have it now, because it's been very helpful. You've got a link to a new immigrant guide, Citizens Almanac, and then Clinic Legal has a toolkit, citizenship toolkit as well. It's a different toolkit than the one I just told you about. again, lots of rabbits to chase on that website as well. Looked like some good stuff, but I tried to suppress myself so I didn't go crazy. Okay. Thought I saw something in the chat. And that is what I have for you. But I'd like to open it up for any questions, comments. What would you like to say?
When I do start mine, Wendy, you're just going to come and help me, right?
You better believe it. Hey, after last week, I'll stop by any time.
Okay, good. That is definitely something I really want to integrate into our program. So you probably will be hearing from me soon.
Awesome, thank you. And since we have several programs on here who do have citizenship programs in place, if you are willing, if you would consider and be so gracious as to think about being a mentor for another program starting this process, if you would please email me, wendy.kittler with 2 T's at arkansas.gov. I would love to hold on to your name for a few months as I drum up some business. The website for the Arkansas United group that I mentioned, let's see, let me pull up on my other device. Maria Wraith is the contact person for that, and I can give you her email. Give me just a second. And she was actually our speaker at the ESL conference. Okay. You can get to them. Her email is director@arkansasunited.org. So I believe you can Google arkansasunited.org and get to them that way. I should have come prepared with that. Sorry about that. You're welcome. Anything else that I left out that I need to hook you up with? All right. Well, I appreciate every one of you, and I thank you for your patience as I got my brain cells back to work after a week of vacation. So thank you so much. And for you experienced veterans, thanks for your patience, and I'm looking forward to begging you for help as I get mentors for these newbies as I try and draft them. So thank y'all so much. I'll stay on for a little while. So you're welcome. I'll see y'all later.
Right. Thank you, Wendy. All right. Everybody give Wendy a thumbs up or a wave in our chat. But I'm entering our Survey Monkey for both this breakout session and the overall conference as well. So let me get it in there and let me press send. So we've got 2 in there, and I'm going to leave the session up for a little while so you can go back and forth so that you can do both of the surveys. Like I said earlier in the very beginning, the last one is the overall conference, and that one will let you print out a certificate at the very end, and then you just have to go in and fill it out. So you will give yourself an hour for every breakout that you attended, unless you attended some of the longer ones. I know we had some that were 2 hours, and then general session was an hour, but we did have, I think, one that was a 2-hour session. So we're using the honor system on putting in the correct hours. And I hope that you all enjoyed yourselves and this 2021 ACE conference. We appreciate you being here.
Hey, Teresa.
Yes.
Nicole had a question. She had a great question, actually. Will we, the state, be able to get copies of the evaluations for the ones we presented?
I think you should be able to.
Okay, awesome.
That's also going to be a Marsha. Marsha will have them, but you should be able to, because as soon as SurveyMonkey pretty much calculates them automatically.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mute myself, and I'm going to just leave this on for a little while so that you can come back and forth. Thank you all.